we appreciate you all coming out, taking your time this morning. We all are on Facebook. We know that there's a lot of activity and conversation that goes on Facebook. We'd like to try to find ways to take some of that passion and implement it into action, and so that's what we're trying to do here today. There's, in the quasi, it's not really an agenda, but this kind of lays out what the survey indicated as some of the recurring topics that came up. And so we're going to try to deal with some, if not all of these, and see if we can come up with some ideas to implement.
Are those in order of kind of, like under each topic, are they in order of how frequently they showed up? Like our priority?
It was, the way the survey, the presentation, the way we put it together is, I can't guarantee, but I feel like this is largely most respondents to least respondents.
Okay.
I won't guarantee that for all of those, but that's what I was trying to do.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Sorry.
We probably should have.
An introduction.
Yeah, I was going to say, before we get started though, what I would like to do is if each person would introduce themselves, say their name and the block that they live on, and then their priority, their number one topic. And then that way, I think what we can do to start out with is for those people who've taken the time and made the effort to come here to go through their ideas first and their concerns first, and then we can move on from there. So again, I'm Cosima. I live in the 800 block of Magnolia. I own a 7-unit rental property. I live at my property, so I am one of those 7 units. I've been here since 2006, and I've served on the board multiple times. For me, the top issue is around zoning and the design standards in our neighborhood conservation district, making sure that those are supported by the city and enforced.
I'm David Altman, currently the president of the board. Unfortunately, about to go into my second year with that, unless somebody wants it. Somebody want it?
You're sick.
I live in the 1000 block of Weisach for the last 11 years. Most important thing for me on here, I guess, and what I already just talked about, increased engagement. I think the more people, it doesn't matter how many problems there are, or not even just problems. There's good things on here too, like increased community and social engagement, but you need the people. So to get more engagement, you can address all of these other issues. So that to me is number one.
I'm Cynthia Spillman. I live on Woodlawn. I have been a member of the board off and on, but mostly on for the last 20 years. I'm just about to get off. I am also a co-founder of Tier 1. Beacon Hill is actually known throughout the city of being a really great neighborhood. Not all neighborhoods are as great as ours, to be honest. I'm right now really focused on displacement and affordable housing. I'm focused on zoning, and we are about to enter a period of great change as the city changes its codes, and as we get our sub-area plan, which is a plan that we won't have a neighborhood plan anymore, but we'll have a larger plan that we'll be a part of. I also think besides displacement and zoning, a big issue is parties, having fun together, enjoying each other's company. I think by doing that, people think of that as frivolous, but that is really one of the most important things we can do. That if we want to have important talks that we need to have, it's good to know each other and trust each other and have fun together.
I'm Lisa Valle, and I've lived in the neighborhood, part of Beacon Hill and then other parts of that outlying neighborhoods for probably about 15 years now. But I've been in Beacon Hill consistently for almost 3 years. And, I love this neighborhood. I love just the atmosphere, the people, and everything. I definitely agree that social events are awesome and a great way to get to know people and get to know your neighbors. But I also think that there's been a lot of talk lately about like the sidewalks and stuff. My mom uses like a wheelchair scooter kind of thing, and she likes to go out sometimes to go for walks, and she can't do that where my house is. I'm at the 800 block of West Woodlawn, and those sidewalks are really bad. she can't just go for a simple like stroll when she wants to. So that's important.
My name is Celia Mendoza, and I'm on the 900 block of West Craig. And I've been in the neighborhood 20 years. And alongside what everyone else is saying, I think inclusivity is also a factor. And I think that would improve engagement and, then you've got the effect of all that. But I'll let it begin.
Mark?
I'm Mark Spielman. I live at the corner of Blanco and Woodlawn. I've been in the neighborhood about 21 years now, I guess. I participate mostly in zoning and, feel like that's the thing that right now is critical for our neighborhood. Try to spend as much time downtown as I possibly can, going to meetings and, getting people that serve on these boards to understand our positions. Sometimes successful, sometimes not.
Thank you, Mark.
I'm Gary Edler. I live on the 1100 block of West Summit. My most important issue is by far crime. I've been there for 25 years. In the last nearly 3 years that I've been retired, I've seen some really disturbing things. I've seen people affected by it. I've been affected by it personally. And when you've been affected by it personally, crime becomes a very serious matter to you. That's when it really hits home. I would love to see something done about it. Only the people can really have an effect, and that is within the perimeters of assisting SAPD. They have courses. One is called COPS, Cellular on Patrol. It's a 4-hour course. I've taken it, 2 years ago, Cynthia? That was the one? And I will take it again, and I really want to do the ride-along. That really makes it real for you. You see what the police go through every night. It occurred to me on the newsletter, how can we help disseminate the importance of crime? I feel like the newsletter could help if every month something about crime was stated. And it begins to hit home with people. That's a mass way of disseminating it. Otherwise, we have Facebook. How is she going to do it at the meetings? Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll circle back to communication. Kim?
I'll step out from behind the camera. I'm Kim Hubbling. I'm married to this guy. I've been in the neighborhood 11 years. I'm going to cherry pick a little bit from what people already said. To me, there are so many issues that are important, but I'm going to go back to what Cynthia said, that I think the social connections are really important because that leads to helping with crime. It's like you become your own neighborhood watch if you know who lives in the homes because you've gotten together. Leads to engagement, leads to caring about people, so you might know my neighbor's getting evicted because her slumlord landlord is, whatever. So I'm going to say social activities and them feeding into engagement.
Thank you. Evan?
Hi, I'm Emily. We live in shoes and socks. My husband and I live on Fulton and Michigan on the corner, and we moved in, I think, this past March. So we're still pretty new to the neighborhood, and in that sense, I'll say that I, probably don't have like a pivotal issue that I stand behind, just because we're still kind of getting a sense of the neighborhood, but still want to, help out and be a part of the neighborhood.
Hi, Steven. We live together, so that's
We do.
easy. Just to kind of piggyback on some of this stuff, I'm a long distance runner, and the sidewalks would be cool. And the dogs are an issue, and especially being on Fulton, Michigan, people don't like the full stop signs, and I was concerned. I run with music on, and I can see myself being in that position where there's a person on car accident. So those are kind of my concerns, but very personal issues. I'm just not going to run around the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Woolsey. So I I claim Beacon Hill because I spend 2/3 of every day here in this building. So I run the Impact Guild, and but then my husband and I live on Agarita. We just squeak into Alta Vista on that side. So, but we feel very embedded in this neighborhood, and I mean, to me, let's see where to start. To me, even what we're trying to do with the Impact Guild is just explore how a business or how an organization can be a good neighbor in and of itself. So I'm really interested in how we try to kind of run things as a social enterprise. So we hold a mission, but then also economic viability as a business kind of together. And I love those conversations of how, so we haven't mentioned supporting kind of the small businesses in the area, and that's something that is just interesting to me. We also have a project here that we're starting on around affordable housing. We're just kicking off a partnership with the city. And the idea there, I really love kind of this idea of like, how can we build on the good things that already exist? And so like one of the opportunities we've identified, even the reason we're here, is because of the generosity of a faith community giving this building and allowing us to do what we do. And so we've kind of recognized that there are faith communities all over the city that hold land and real estate, and we're starting a system to approach them about how they could maybe use that real estate for affordable housing needs. So that just to say, I'm kind of tend to live in this mashed up space of how could we build bridges between organizations and help activate kind of whether it's the business they already do or the real estate that they hold, to help tune them into these conversations and activate them to be problem solvers as well. So that's kind of the lens I come with.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I want to interrupt. I want to thank you, Sarah, because she is letting us use this space.
Yeah.
She's so invested in this neighborhood just for herself and her husband Bill, and providing this for us at no charge. We've had the Christmas party here, and
We love it. We love it.
Sorry.
My name is Robert Flores. We've been here since December 2017, and one of the things that I really like about this neighborhood, that has a lot of potential to be a beautiful, beautiful neighborhood. I think my thing that I've talked to my wife about is, I think it would fall under property maintenance, just helping those that can't maintain their houses, just at least just curb appeal. It would just greatly improve this neighborhood. It would just make it look, like, Alta Vista or other neighborhoods even better. And I think that would benefit us all in the long run, because and I piggyback on Gary, if we improve our neighborhood by volunteering and helping each other, we meet each other. That eliminates the crime, because there's more people visible. Let's say, for instance, there's certain areas in the community, in our neighborhood, that tend to have more crime or more situations dealing with crime. If we work together and make this neighborhood what it could be, I think it would change. It would change a lot. And it's just basically meeting your neighbor. I talk to a lot of people. A lot of people don't know who lives across the street or next door to each other. I know everybody in my area, and we watch out for each other, and that's the way it should be.
I'm Diana Flores, and like Robert said, it'll be 2 years since we moved on 900 block of Summit. But I did grow up just up the street off Blanco. It's Los Angeles Heights, but I could walk to my mom's. But she still lives there. So I grew up kind of in this neighborhood, a little bit further up. But I do agree with the social aspects, because it does lead to all the other things we're talking about. But I do agree, when we volunteer to pass out the newsletters, and a lot of times we'll meet elderly, they're in their front yard, and you look at their house, and sometimes you wonder, like my husband said, it just takes a little bit, and how would they feel if a crew came in here one morning and just painted or mowed or... So I agree with all the things everybody said, but I also am passionate. I mean, when we talked about having a meeting today, to me, that was one of the biggest things I'm passionate about, is helping those neighbors who can't fend for themselves.
And also maybe like outreach.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because like,
You
you
get
go to the-
identify them.
Yeah,
You're not
'cause-
gonna raise their hand.
Yeah, because, you know, when you go to the meetings, I think that's such a great information is shared about what city programs there are to help these people, but if the people don't know about all the available to them at no cost, how are they gonna get the help, so.
But there may be fear
Yeah.
with the, no, property taxes on that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Great. Well, I think we all, and that's why we're all here. We all care deeply about our neighborhood. We care deeply about our residents. Nancy, I'm going to have you speak as well. You came in late, but go ahead and give us your name and the block that you live on, and if there's one particular reason that you're here.
I'm Nancy Cook Monroe and live in the 800 block of West Mistletoe. And my husband lived here first. He's been here 15 years. We've been married for 12. And when he moved here, well, as Cynthia said, you couldn't get a pizza delivered in the neighborhood because of the crime. And it's just really blossomed since we've been here. But I will say I walk a lot, as I'm sure all of you do. And it's really kind of a bummer that there's so many either sidewalks that are just big chunks of concrete, or, and maybe you've already talked about this, or that have, it could be prevented where the neighbors just let their bushes grow over, or they put brush on the sidewalk, or park a car in the middle. And even more distressing, or as distressing, is all the garbage as you walk along in people's yards. And Robert, it connects to what you were saying, that yes, there's painting and things, but also just simple get out and, you know, bend over and pick it up, put in the garbage can. And I know that they're not, some people, because people I know will do that, aren't necessarily, I mean, they're not infirm or anything. They just don't take the pride in their home and clean it up. I remember hearing years ago about how Holland, the country of Holland, is very clean because people are proud of the way their homes look and even sweep the sidewalks and the streets in front of their homes. And so, you know, we're not flawless at all, but try to leaf blow or sweep on the sidewalk and certainly pick up the trash. So I think it would be a much more inviting neighborhood if it were cleaned up.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take a little bit of license here since I was given the task of leading this. I've done a lot of neighborhood volunteer work over my time here, and it's difficult. I mean, we have micro and we have macro, and that's where some of the struggle and the tension comes in. We deal on a micro level, but we're controlled by macro policies. And so sometimes it feels like being a hamster on a wheel. You know, you're running and you're trying to solve this house and that person and the benevolent fund here helping a family. And it's just constant like that, and you don't feel like you ever get ahead and get traction. So a lot of what Cynthia and I do with the Tier 1 Neighborhood Coalition is to elevate into policy changes, and so that as we're thinking in this conversation, make sure if you have ideas, contacting our elected representatives. It's not outside the pale. So that's one thing. There was a great analogy that I heard once. I was at the SAWS Spring Bloom event, and there was a guy talking about organic gardening. And he said, instead of spraying pesticides on your grass, nurture your grass, make your grass as healthy as you can. And it, through its healthiness, will keep the weeds out. And so I think that is the same with community. Make your community healthy. Strengthen the individuals in your community and their abilities and their faith and their confidence. And that will help solve some of these problems. So I think ultimately that goes to this. And I put this up here because this is like a hub and these are the spokes. The same is true for housing. As Cynthia knows, stability in housing creates stability in schools and other areas. So we have certain hubs that I think if we can kind of focus on the hubs, that will help improve or guide us in how we want to work on some of this. The other thing quickly I want to say before we kind of get into the conversation is, the other analogy I would use is a community is like a chair. It needs 4 strong legs. And those legs are the religious institutions, the schools, the residents, and the businesses. We need all of them to be engaged, and we need all of them to feel good about where they are and the work that they're doing. And I think there again, by focusing on some of these hub ideas, we can then get some of the improvement that we're looking for here. And I use the word improvement because I don't like to use words like eliminate or perfection or 100%, because it's not going to happen. We're not going to eliminate crime in the neighborhood. We can consistently work to lower crime, to make it safer. But I don't want to make allusions to promises that we're not going to be able to do.
Can you add displacement, traffic, and affordable housing to the list? Because those were mentioned. And I know they sort of tie into other things up there.
Displacement, like gentrification, is that right?
I don't usually use the word gentrification because it's so hard for everyone to understand.
Displacement, traffic, and what's the third thing?
Affordable housing.
Okay.
And property taxes.
Property taxes.
It's a lot.
Okay. And the other, and again, working on all of these things, we can do what we can do here, but we also are going to have a way to talk to city, to talk to electeds, because they need to help us implement. Once we've got our plan together, we need to be able to then also work with our partners, both in the city and in the elected offices, to help us make those things work. So those relationships are really, really important, and Beacon Hill has done a really good job of fostering those relationships, staying top of mind with those people, knowing who's in the development services department, knowing how the boards and commissions work, and having folks on the boards and commissions. So that's another thing. The city has all these boards and commissions that have committee member seats, and residents can volunteer to sit on those seats. The council member nominates you, and the more people that we can have on those boards and commissions, the more weight we can also carry in making some of these improvements. Okay, so that's just kind of the layout. I know that this has been a long stint. These are problems that, are constant. And so this is nothing new, all of these really, but I'm going to highlight these here. So let's start with the sidewalks, because that's in a sense an easy one in that it's not human behavior related. It's money related. It's priorities that our government senses. So on sidewalks, we know that there are 2 ways that sidewalks get done. They get done through the bond, and they get done through the general budget. The city offers its residents opportunities to participate in those processes, but most people don't know about it. So how can we better inform and engage our residents when the city has a survey that says, let us know about sidewalks in your area that need improvement? They have a website for that. You can go on there, you can look what sidewalks are going to be improved this year, next year, and the following year based on their schedule. You can ask them to improve sidewalks, you can ask the council person. So the vehicles are there, but how do we educate more people or incentivize more people to get involved at that level. Facebook, if we had all the energy that's on Facebook doing stuff, we'd be unstoppable. How do we shift that? How do we translate people's passion and engagement on Facebook into something that's more substantial? So I'm going to open it up now and ask some of y'all to just kind of talk about your ideas, or talk about if you have something specific, that's fine, or if you have something to talk, that's more on the macro level, that's fine. So is there somebody that wants to make a comment?
About sidewalks or anything?
Anything.
So one of the things we've worked on in Tier 1 is creating a zoning manual to help educate citizens about how the process works and how, what's going on in the city. Zoning seems like it's something dry, but nothing more affects a lot of those issues than the kind of zoning issues and UDC code issues that are coming down through the city.
What is UDC?
Unified Development codes. So it's a codes that everybody uses, but their interpretation sometimes is different than what's actually written, which is a whole other issue. So how many here in this room, and it's okay to say no, because I get it. Like if we had small classes, like an hour, and you could learn some things about zoning that would help make good decisions about your properties and the properties around you, how many would attend that? Okay, all right, so we'll continue down that. We're almost done with the manual and doing PowerPoints that break it down, like make it easier.
I would add to that, being a mom with a small kid, would really try to, but it would be hard, especially full-time working and having small kids. And I would always be an advocate for in-person first, but if some of those resources could live online as well,
They will be online.
to be able to access that would be huge as well, in case you can't scheduling-wise make it.
Would it be helpful to, like what she's doing now, is to take one of the sessions so that you also have the PowerPoints, the actual manual itself, and then something, would that be helpful?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in there because that's something I'm trying to do over the last few months. We have these meetings, a lot of people can't come, but they want to be engaged, and there are things that are said at those meetings that, we take minutes and we put them in the newsletter, but there's so much nuance and detailed conversation that people don't get to see. So I'm hoping that the videos will give people an opportunity to see what the meetings are like. They're not scary, and they might get more engaged just by having the opportunity to see what we do.
Would it help to have food? Of course, with children, it's hard to learn because you're also attending children. Okay.
It doesn't matter as much. It's more scheduling.
Okay.
So, in person, I agree with Sarah, is always a little bit more impactful. This is really helpful, and the city has, thanks to Councilwoman Sandoval and her principles of public participation, the city is now videotaping the zoning commission meetings, the planning commission, HDRC, Board of Adjustments. And so you can go online 24 hours after the meeting. They live stream them as well. And so if there's a particular case, or you just want to get familiar with, how does this work? What is this HDRC? What is a Board of Adjustment? You can go look at those. I think it's a great tool. One of my concerns is I think the people that will use that tool are the people that are already super engaged in that topic. So I'll go back and look at some of that film because I have a specific question about what somebody said. But in general, most of you here, if you would answer for yourselves, do you go back and look at, let's say, one of the previous meetings because you have a question in your mind, or I don't remember what was said? Are you likely to?
We've only yet
I know, but I'm just wondering if in general.
But Nowcast has done a couple of our meetings, and those meetings were crucial. They were
Right, but do people go back and look? Do y'all, is there something else? Is there, what I'm trying to
You go to
scratch at
Facebook
is
and
is there something, some other way that would drive you to go seek that information?
Well, I know when I was secretary of the board for a year, I took, and I am on another board, I take way more minutes than anybody needs. I mean, that's not true. It's about probably what you would need with bullet points on who said what, but it's way too long for the newsletter, and they're always abbreviated anyway. So I think maybe if the real minutes, whoever takes them, if they're taken in a thorough way, is a way more concise way, quick way, and instead of watching through, a linear video just to go look at the thing and figure out where the topic is and bingo.
So I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're saying. So having a
It's like
guideline
format.
to the video that says.
No, unrelated to the video.
Oh, okay.
Because, it's too time consuming.
So
Yeah.
how would we distribute, so you're saying more robust minutes should exist and then abbreviated in the newsletter and maybe more of a.
Yeah, maybe a
more of a
website,
Specific call to action, like if you
We-
want
we
more
actually-
details.
or maybe they do already.
Well, we just recently started that. When we revised the website recently, we had a page that has archives of the minutes. So the full minutes taken as you would have taken would be there, and then the abridged version goes in this one.
Okay, good.
I would say, to play devil's advocate, I mean, Robert's rule says all you really need to do is take motion, and we try to find some middle ground. But, when you're in those meetings, it's very difficult. I know you were good at it, but for
Well,
most
it
of
is
us,
difficult,
and then it's
because I
still
don't know all the
subjective
names.
about, who said what and when, and often there's errors that come up. Video is like,
It
there
is
it
helpful for the person taking the minutes, no doubt, because they can always go back and check those. Sarah?
Well, so my thought, and kind of where you started this conversation, Cynthia, I was hearing like almost like a zoning 101 or this 101, like curating because I'm kind of hearing you say some level of like hierarchy of information is really helpful. Like if it gets curated, so if some of the tools were kind of like, you don't know where to start with zoning, here's like a zoning 101, and it's bite-sized. It's not all the things. It can get you down to then if you want to dig to layer 2 and layer 3, you could eventually dig down to watching all of those meetings, and that's great. But kind of you need somebody, and that's the hard work, but you need somebody to draw out like, if you're brand new to this conversation, here are your top 5 takeaways, your top 5 best places to go to understand this and how to take action on it. And leading with kind of, I come from a design background, so I just love thinking about like, how can you quickly and concisely communicate that, and what is the really clear way to take action on it, and leave that, I mean, not much more than a couple of points, 1 page of information.
Would you partner with us?
I'm happy to have conversations. What does this partner mean? Yes, let's talk more about that.
So you all know that we have a number of committees
Yeah.
in the neighborhood. And those committees are for the purpose of drilling down on a particular issue or topic and working on that. This can be a little bit daunting, it's true, but we have a zoning and urban design committee. And by participating and being at those meetings and being involved in those email chains and those conversations, it's also a way to learn on the ground. I learn on the ground best. I don't learn really well from sort of looking at the manual or doing this. I just like to jump into the battle, and then that's how I'm gonna learn. So I think one of the things, both on communications and on how people learn, we need to always be willing to have multiple options available. A lot of people have talked about we should get rid of the newsletter because all the paper and the trees and all of that. We have lots of people in this neighborhood that rely on that newsletter that don't have internet. And so I don't think that is a viable
So
option.
also speaking to that, if you're brand new in the neighborhood, how do you find out there even is a neighborhood association? I
Right.
read that thing for a year before I went to one meeting.
That's how we found out.
Yeah,
I had no
exactly.
clue. I was like,
That's how I got engaged. So I think this is critical still, but I think this is also critical. And lately, and thanks to Kim especially, who pays a lot of attention to Facebook and then lets the board know if there are certain topics, lately, we've had a couple of things come up which are almost projects in the works on Facebook. So I don't think we can discount that as a viable tool. So,
Well, just in the survey, it asked, one of the early questions was about sources of information, and Facebook and the newsletter Facebook actually edged out the newsletter, but they were both high.
yeah, and I know there's also Nextdoor. I'm not on that, but I know there are other people that also, to me, it seems like there's a lot of duplication between the two.
Well, the thing about Nextdoor is that, like, I actually happen to notice our Facebook group was created 10 years ago. Nextdoor has only been in existence for a couple of years. So by the time Nextdoor was on the scene, we had so many people who were used to Facebook. So Nextdoor has a lot of value, and I try to cross-post about it, and at least meetings and announcements. If you find a dog, Nextdoor is great because you're not just posting to your neighborhood. You can tell it, please share it with these 27 neighborhoods that border us, you know. But I feel like we're also entrenched in Facebook.
Yeah, and that's it. We have multiple tools that different people like to use. We need to keep them all going. I think that's important.
Well, I was just thinking back to the sidewalk thing you started
Right,
with.
right.
So, Trevino was trumpeting this, they started this new way of approaching it, it's called the sidewalk squad.
The sidewalks what?
Squad.
Oh, okay.
It's the counterpoint to the popple, whatever it is.
Popple, yeah.
You wanted to catch a name for it. Anyway, it's a new approach for how they're addressing sidewalks, and apparently a shift in the funding for it, taking more of the onus off of the residents. Most of you probably have learned by now that by statute, the residents are responsible for maintaining their own sidewalks, which is a pretty pricey thing to put on residents, especially.
That's something that needs to be stressed.
Yeah. So, and he hasn't thought it was fair, and he's been working to change it, so the sidewalk squad's the latest round of that, like city doing more and taking some of that burden off the residents. And long intro to wondering, does anyone know if that's changed? I mean, I have requests like, hey, I'd like the sidewalk squad to come hit my street. So like, I don't know, I'm asking, I don't know if there's a new process there, or if it's still just sort of waiting for the city to notice it, or what.
So there are multiple processes, and this is what's important when you're advocating, is to understand the system. So people are part of it, yes, and encouraging people to be engaged, but then understanding the system and knowing how best to make it work. And again, where it comes to the sidewalks, TCI has a website where you can go and see which sidewalks and streets and drainage, multiple TCI projects are going to happen on any street in any of the next 5 years. And then if the problem, like let's say you think Beacon needs to be redone and it's not on there, then you could make a request to have that done. Going to the council person and making sure they know that this street is a problem. So I'm wondering, do we think it's more efficient and more effective as an organization to gather the information from our constituents, from our people, and then have a team in place or a person who then gets that, communicates that further? Or do we think that we want to assist our residents in learning these tools so that they can, both now and in the future, make those requests themselves? And that wouldn't just be about sidewalk, but that would kind of be I think that's a fundamental question of whether or not we want to encourage people to bring their issues to us, and then we handle them, or do it's kind of the teach the man to fish versus the giving them fish thing, or do we want to try to teach people?
I think it's a combination. I think they bring it to the neighborhood association, the Beacon Hill where they contact, but then when they're bringing that info, at that point you say, yes, this is what you also need to do, because it's only going to be effective if everyone participates. So we'll do our part, but you do your part. So then you're also training them simultaneously.
So, for me, one of the goals of this meeting is to, so committees do, the board does a lot, but committees do a lot, and I know that sounds the same, but people don't necessarily realize that you don't have to go to the board with everything. You have committees you can go to, and I think we need more committees. And so I feel like we need a, what would the word be for an infrastructure committee? That sounds fancy, but if you see like some of the neighborhoods, not to get too specific, some of the streets on the northern part of the neighborhood, right by Hildebrand, those streets are like driving off-road. Like they'll have like a 8-inch dip, just in the, 9 of them in a row. And so the residents of those streets could say like, oh, Beacon Hill has an infrastructure committee, we'll find something friendlier to call it. That's who I can call first for like, what do I do? And maybe that committee says like, oh, a lot of people have said that we're gonna be the squeaky wheel. So I feel like a lot of the things on that list we could start committees for.
Okay.
Crime is another really important one, so in any event, that's fine.
And that goes back to kind of what Daniel opened with. We can sit here today, make these lists, and she's taking notes, and it's being filmed. But if the follow-up isn't there, if the creation of the human capital isn't, or the cultivation of the human capital isn't there, it won't really do what it's intended to do. Cynthia.
What I know is that you get more traction if you work through a neighborhood association. I'm not saying people don't have power on their own, but the idea of neighborhood association is really a rising thing in our city right now. They're recognizing associations in a way they never did in the past, and there's good and bad things about that. So, I agree with Kim about the committees. And I also don't want us, people sometimes will say here, and then it's like, and then they're gone. It's like, well, wait a minute, I'm a volunteer like you. I can't do all this work. We have to somehow engage people through committees. Like, just because there's a problem, how can you help us solve that and form a kind of partnership?
And I think one of the things that's important psychologically is to help people understand that that engagement is an investment that they are making for their own family, for their own property, as well as for their community. So it's something that gives back. It's not just something you do and get no return on. It actually brings a return. We have committees now, but I can tell you, we're talking about starting more committees when we have trouble getting the engagement on the committees that we have. How do we change that? That's the crux of really, the matter. Sidewalks and crime, like I said, straight outs, these are things that the city handles, and we have to, find out how do we get to the top of the list? How do we make sure that our concerns are being heard? And having an infrastructure committee would certainly be a good way to do that.
People seem to get scared at the word committee, though.
This is true. So even just a point of contact, like this is something I've been doing. I would love if someone else took it. When I see stuff going on Facebook that I think the safe officer should know about, I'll try to encourage people to contact. And if I think they're not, I'll send them a heads up with a screenshot of the Facebook conversation. And sometimes that leads to nothing,
but recently.
Right.
It led to a successful story.
It helped anyway.
Right, and the safe officer thanked the community for what they had done. So that's also, when we can get some of that recognition, that helps people feel like, okay, it made a difference, it's worth it. And there was another situation, the thing on Grant and Lowood with the duplex. So that popped up on Facebook. We have a zoning and urban design committee. We had no idea that this house had been a problem for 2 years. Now we can take that information and actually, since we're familiar with the structure of the city and how those cases get handled, we can get in there now and start pushing and monitoring and making that process be a little bit more expedited. So,
and that's a specific, but context there is it's condemned and squatters keep moving in.
Okay, so it's not condemned yet.
Okay, it's not
Just
condemned.
to be clear, and that's one of the dangers of the social media outlet, is information gets on there that is inaccurate. So when.
Well, there are squatters.
Yes, there are squatters.
And it's vacant, there was a fire, and
It's
there are
also
squatters.
important to understand that these processes will take a long time. It could take up to 2 years for that home to be demolished, but I would pose a question, and I'm gonna just kind of derail this for a second, if you'll let me. Is it the house that's at fault? Is it the walls and the roof and the floor and the doors that are causing the crime and the problem of vagrancy? No, it is the owner of the property that is not being responsible. He lives in Monte Vista. He lives a mile away. He doesn't care about Beacon Hill apparently, or the people who live around his house. I think we go after the owner and we say, dude, come on, this is a problem. We need the housing. We need the housing. So to tear down the house, those people will just go someplace else. That doesn't solve the problem. So that's just something that I would mention is sometimes we get tricked a little bit into a quick solution to a problem, which gets us off the city's back, but isn't really the solution that we think it is. So knowing the city policies, knowing the way these things work is important. We have people in the organization that can do that. How do we get more people involved? And how do we, again and again, highlight opportunities that are already in place to solve some of these problems, like the sidewalks, like making the requests online, like making the request to the council person, like understanding that when the bonds come up every 5 years, there's millions of dollars that go into the bonds for sidewalks and making sure that we're getting some of those.
It's not an election year, but couldn't we ask our councilman, our District 1 councilman, once we pinpoint what sidewalks need, really need work, why don't we invite them to do a neighborhood or a block walk?
Absolutely. So,
What are you gonna do?
survey on sidewalks. Do we want to say that we're going to put, whether it's on Facebook, whether we do a survey or a poll, some of you who are more technologically savvy than I am could maybe know the answer to this question. Do we put a poll up or something on Facebook and or in the newsletter that says we are preparing to meet with our councilman regarding sidewalks? Please let us know if the sidewalk in your area needs repair. Now, it's going to open it up. We're going to get a lot of lists, but that's how we could do that. We could take it off the city site and kind of make it personal. Is that what we think is the most efficient way to go? Engages people, so that's helpful. Yeah.
Only if we're done with sidewalks, but it sort of ties into, one of the things we've always thought about in Beacon Hill is that we first try to solve problems ourselves, and reaching out to a councilman is one of them. I mean, there's some neighborhoods like they want everyone to come in and do for them, and like our community garden was because we plowed up that land ourselves, with water in our trunks. I mean, we're that kind of neighborhood. But I was thinking more about your maintenance issues. I mean, as a teacher, I know that better than punishing is to reward those who are doing a good job, tends to make other people fall in line. So we might, you might help us think about ways that we can, maybe we can give out awards and ask local businesses, can you give them a free drink with their meal or something that, and highlight it in the newsletter every month, or, do something that creates an award system or some kind of recognition, like yard of the month or yard of the week or, whatever.
And I think I like that idea because it then engages the business community and engages them with residents. So motivating people, making them feel like they're part of a team, I think is huge. And we have that ability because we have a very sort of team-like structure. So we need to, we worked hard on the inclusivity. We've now put a lot of stuff in Spanish in the newsletter. That's been an improvement. Renters, we make a point of saying renters are welcome. So we've really worked on the inclusivity, but how do we translate that into getting people to commit more time? I think if we're going to address any of these things, that's, as Daniel said in his opening, I think that's one of the crucial issues. The same is true with the crimes with the sidewalks. There, as Gary mentioned, there's the Citizens on Patrol program.
When you're finished.
Okay, but there's also the Neighborhood Watch program. Now, those are things that really, especially the Neighborhood Watch, the people living on those blocks have to do themselves, because they have to have a block captain that's willing to do the communication with the block, and that's the kind of effort that's meant to be. It's not meant to be a top-down. It's meant to be a block by block. And there's one block can be a Neighborhood Watch block, and the next block doesn't have to be. So if somebody wants to start a Neighborhood Watch, they can do that. I think, Gary, I don't know if you've looked at that. I think there may also be some training that you have to do with SAFE, and I think the neighborhood may have to purchase the signs for it themselves or something.
I believe so. In our block, the sign we had, which we don't have anymore, by the way, it did no good at all. Nobody was afraid of the sign. However, unless, as you say, the neighbors are really in a program, helping each other out. But yes, it was purchased within our block.
Okay.
I know that. That's been some years ago.
Okay. So, again, it's engagement and tools and putting those things together.
Well, I'm going to be brief because it's specific to crime. So I'm sensing maybe the feeling that an actual committee might not make sense, but I do still feel like there should be a point person or somebody that, yes, individual blocks need to do it, but there should be just something like maybe periodically in the newsletter. Are you concerned about crime? There are these programs. Call so-and-so and we can help point you in the direction, because I feel like we should try to facilitate that in some way. It could just
I wasn't trying to say we would abandon the community to their own devices,
Okay.
but I think and especially with things like crime, I think if you don't have the investment of the people, then you're not going to get the traction that you need, because they have to be willing to come forward, they have to be willing to keep their eyes out, they have to be willing to be active in the process. But
There has
yes,
to be real participation.
yeah,
or
there
else,
has to be.
as you said earlier, just words.
Right. Cynthia?
No, never.
No, okay, thanks.
Two quick thoughts. Not, I hate to shoot down your yard of the month idea, but I would
Daniel,
always win.
speak up.
It would all,
Oh, yeah.
I would always win the yard of the month, so there's no point in doing it.
Well, there is that.
But another idea that would possibly two birds with one stone is, and it's somebody mentioned it in the survey, block parties.
Yeah.
Trying to push and encourage and almost campaign to get blocks to have block parties. You get the social engagement, you learn who your neighbors are, you're engaged with your neighbors, and I think from that you're more likely to get the sort of result you're looking for of people coming together. You can talk about issues that are specific to your street, because there are some streets in this neighborhood that don't have the issues of crime, so they don't really care about that much. But if it's a big deal on your street, then you should be talking to your neighbors, and I think a block party makes it more personal and brings it in. It's one thing, like we as a neighborhood, but some of these things are block issues. The sidewalks on a block, there's crime on a block, the trash on a block, but they're localized enough that I think maybe we need to get this group of people talking to each other about it.
So would it help if the board, like maybe that, or Heart of the Neighborhood, maybe it's a better Heart of the Neighborhood, did a kind of, this is how you do a block party, and we'll help you. Like, because I think about doing, I think, okay, where do I even get started on that? So maybe that could be something that the board could do, and then people on different blocks, like, okay, that's pretty easy. Or Heart of the Neighborhood, I think this is the Heart of the Neighborhood project, but that might be something Heart of the Neighborhood could do, and people here could participate in that.
And then the block parties too, you could use it as a forum of, hey, did you know that the meeting, hey, did you know that this meeting on zoning and the training is coming up? You could use that as all that, kind of a catch-all thing.
There
There are some things that need to be considered with block parties. If a neighborhood is going to block their street to do a block party, they need a permit. So we need to,
Well,
yeah.
what I'm picturing isn't necessarily something that intrusive or that big. There's Agarita. There's a block up from us in Agarita that I think once a month maybe.
They do like a potluck picnic on
Yes.
someone's lawn.
So when I say the block party, I don't know what you're saying.
Okay.
It seems like
We
how
knew
big-
nothing, they've been doing it for years, and we knew nothing.
Yeah.
We happened to be at one of the homes for on and off Fred, and the neighbor told us that they do that. And I'm like,
That's in Beacon Hill?
Yeah.
On Agarita.
It's like the 1,000 block of Agarita, and yeah,
Uh-huh.
they're not shutting down the street. They're just like, oh, everybody goes to Fred's house this afternoon because we're getting to go.
So here's a thought, this was just a thought. National Night Out is meant to bring a community together around safety. We have done that since I've been in the neighborhood in a large forum where we have one big party. It's not so much about safety. It's about bringing neighbors out and getting them to meet other neighbors. And there's kids' activities and school supplies, so it definitely is a positive event. But there's other neighborhoods that encourage people to do mini block parties. And so that would be an idea. We could either separately from National Night Out do our own little event where we invited people to do block parties. Do we think that's better to do as a one-time, kind of everybody on this night, we're going to have a block party night in Beacon Hill, or do we just put the idea out there and encourage people if they want to talk to their neighbors and do something on their own?
I think probably keep it more flexible.
Yeah.
So, it's a fun idea, like, oh,
Just
the whole neighborhood's
encourage it,
doing
but let
everybody
people
goes
do it
and
on their
it's
own.
like, yeah, let them work out what's best for their block.
And
Well, sorry, can I, so my mind had gone to the exact same spot before you mentioned it, and I could see if it became like a regular rhythm, and Cynthia, I was thinking the same thing of like just a really easy, like, here's a 3-step process of what this could mean, to kind of dispel even the myth of like, oh, we have to close down the street or whatnot, just outline really easily. And if that then, and just kind of leave it for a few months out there and let people take it and make it their own. But if it became a regular rhythm and something we talked about and saw happen successfully on a couple of blocks, then it could become this thing, say, February of next year, we're really wanting to do a sidewalk push. Then in like the neighborhood meetings and things like that, it could be like, hey, as you're considering holding a block party, you might also take this other thing we've developed, like, hey, we're looking at taking the necessary sidewalks to the city councilman. You could have that conversation when you have your block party. And it could just become this rhythm of like, block parties are happening, so we're assuming as you're having those, hey, happen to talk this quarter about this issue. Hey, if you want to talk this quarter about this issue, this has come up. And if that becomes, but just let it be fun and social for the first like 3-6 months kind of a thing. But if it became something we focused on for long enough, it could become this mechanism where then you could get a little more specific of, you as your block might want to start talking about the sidewalks or the crime or the things that are relevant for you all. And there could be a different set of resources even that's like, if you want to have that conversation, here's a way to have that
So how do we
conversation.
tie that in? And the only reason you need to tie that into the association neighborhood, so that there could be follow-up. So this could be a more formal follow-up. So would you have people on those blocks, like, we would call and say, hey, how did it go? And do you have anything you want to report back that we
Right,
need
there
to
was a
focus
picture
on?
of a block captain or something that's
Yeah.
coordinated, of course, which makes it a lot more complicated, the web. To be a good web to have, but it's a lot harder to maintain and figure out who that is.
well, but if you're like, hey, you should have parties on your block, go forth. But if you don't have someone who says, I will be the one to tell all the neighbors, then is it gonna happen?
No.
Well, I was thinking that guide, the first thing is kind of like, at least at the start, you probably need a captain or somebody kind of owning that.
A point person.
A
People
point
don't like that
person.
idea of like, I don't want to be a captain.
Yeah, whatever, the right
Well,
word is.
I'm curious, because having block captains would be really beneficial on
All of
doing all of this. It
Yeah,
goes back to
exactly.
this sort of
It becomes the hub, exactly.
Right. And so maybe we want to put out this idea not as a mandate, but the suggestion that individual blocks working together can be more powerful than people sporadically trying to bring change. And so do we want to maybe think about communicating? It would be more a communication thing. I don't see it as something that we would manage, but something that we would, again, it's part of that teaching people how to fish thing, making them invested, making them involved. Different blocks have different personalities. Not all of Beacon Hill is the same, in case people haven't noticed. So it allows the blocks to kind of do their own thing. And not all people on all blocks are going to want to participate. But the more activity, you know, I sit on the Linear Creeks Parks Advisory Board, and when we're building new trails in neighborhoods, they're always worried about the traffic. They're always worried about hooligans and vandalism coming through on those trails into their neighborhoods. What has been proven over and over again, as those trails get used, as our linear parks get used, as public facilities get used, the crime goes down because there are more people there, there are more eyes there, and they'd rather go to someplace where it's quieter. So any amount of additional engagement and activity is always beneficial, and will have the side effect, I think, of improving all of these things. So we've kind of spent the first hour kicking around a lot of ideas, identifying some of the issues, but I think I'd like to move the conversation into a little harder territory now, which is, okay, what are we going to do? When we leave here today, what's the list? What are the actions? What's the plan? What are we going to do? Because if not, we're really just in the same place as when we walk through the door. We're people who care. We're people who are willing to spend some time and effort to help the thing, but we're the same people. So what is our action plan? So here I've got the things that came up as issues. Here are some tools, just some ideas that I spread out. Kim, you've got this now.
Let me take a shot of it.
And then I want to kind of.
You can turn it around if you want.
Oh,
Just flip it or.
okay. Such a simple idea. No wonder I didn't realize that. It was like complicated animals if you haven't done this. Okay.
Just in case.
And let's think of, in my opinion, and you guys, I'm just up here because I was picked, but I don't have any credentials. So I think the action plan can do a lot for what we have on this side of the board. So when we think of the action plan, I don't think we want to have an action plan specifically to deal with sidewalks or specifically to deal with stray dogs, but specifically to deal with engagement, improving the strength and health of the community, giving people faith and confidence that their time is valuable, that their voices are heard, that it's a positive thing to be involved.
I would say action plan would need to organize by street or by block or whatever it is.
I think that's the big idea that we've come up with. Like, I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Especially if there's like deer involved.
Okay, porch beers.
So
Yes, sir.
we talked a lot about how Facebook's a great tool because most people don't come to the meetings. A way of distributing information, so keyword crime, like it becomes very personal when it happens to you. That happened to us. It becomes very personal. You try to start working on some of these issues, and just like a default, like, hey, like here's some tools for you that you can use for your particular issue, sidewalk, crime, whatever it is. Default post, hey, and if you're like super passionate about this now because it's becoming a huge problem for you, please engage with the appropriate committee or at the meetings, whatever it is. That way I think it can help turn the energy that people have when something personal happens to them then it rolls into like, well, now it's super personal to me. I want to be engaged, and they go engage. Kind of rolls into that train. I don't know.
No, so let's flesh that out a little bit.
Like,
So, and help me, because I'm not sure I understood. So you're saying Facebook is a good communication tool.
I don't personally use it, but I heard a lot of good things about it.
And it's obviously, it's something that's used widely in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
So whether it's Facebook or Nextdoor, and the newsletter, I think when we talk about communicating, we want to talk about doing it all three ways. So we've got we are encouraging someone to.
Right, so, go ahead.
So what happens often on Facebook is people think because they post something, somehow they've done something.
Right.
Like something's done now.
Right.
And so what you're saying is like, don't leave it at that. That, you know, come on and say, just because you're posting on Facebook doesn't mean this is over. Like you should do this or this or.
But how? How is that communicated? How is that done? And let me put a timeout real quickly. Kim is kind of our Facebook expert.
Oh, well, I mean, I was not trying to get my head around, but it sounded like what you were saying is maybe we would have sort of boilerplate responses. So if someone is like, my block, the squatters, whatever, we have sort of a set answer that's not impersonal, but it's
How
like.
do they find that?
Well, somebody would watch it and post it.
Right.
So someone who's on Facebook, not like they're gonna catch everything, but if people are like, I don't know who to talk to you about the trash in my neighbor's lawn, boom, here's the, go to this site, whatever.
Right, and I work in cybersecurity for the Air Force, so probably could manage to make this slightly automated so that it could email someone with particular like basic keyword search, email someone and like, hey, like this
Now
is popped
there's a tool.
Like, this has popped up on Facebook.
I know,
Yeah.
that's exactly,
What about like follow-up, like saying, hey, did you ever resolve your issue with squatters? And then that information, how it was resolved or not resolved, is beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, and I'm trying to turn from like, someone just tried to break into my house, I called the cops, end of story, into like, hey, like, engage with the community, like together we can help solve this problem.
Okay, interesting.
And so that we have like a boilerplate response of like, hey, I know this bad thing happened to you, like here's some options for you to come involve, and also like we're working on this issue every time we have a meeting, please come to the meetings, whatever it is, and because I'm a computer person, I want to turn it into something that's not a human being having to sit there and do it, but like, hey, the keyword crime came up 15 times, something obviously happened, maybe we should post an article. And
So not individually watching threads, but like periodically a post, we see the word dog in 15 posts.
Right,
which is like happens all
it's an
the
option.
time.
I
like that.
Yeah, it's inconsequential one way or the other of like, hey,
So I like it.
Yeah.
I like it too, but I have found that the more, the more automated you can make it, the better. In other words, just the same response over and over, not trying to individualize the responses to people, but especially if you have a way to keyword activate it. So then it's just maybe it's something about the COP program, maybe it's something about the block party program, maybe it's the safe officers number, but that's so that there's less need for somebody to be monitoring that and making sure it works. But that's great. So there's a tool. There's something that we can definitely work on that I think would be helpful. And Stephen, what do you need to do to see if you can get that to work? What do you need from us?
Don't need anything particularly right now from anyone in the room. I just need to do some research and actually look at the Facebook page.
Okay.
And then you'll need to write someone to write the language would be something that you would need.
Yes.
Okay, so if you can work on the technical side, and then when you're ready, engage with the board, that'd be fantastic. Robin.
So I think one of the things we're going to have to do to be able to automate something like that is, I'm not really engaged with Facebook these days, but I think we're going to have to start encouraging the use of hashtags then. Mm-hmm. So if somebody posts something about, a break-in or whatever, that person needs to be encouraged to use the hashtag crime. Or somebody who's responding to it needs to
Exactly.
throw that hashtag in there. So you gotta really
Someone
get.
could just comment, like if someone posts anything about cool history, I'll just tag a comment, BH history.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, like
Right.
that.
It doesn't have to be the original.
So somebody needs to be hashtagging and encouraging other people to hashtag their post, or that's not gonna work. Because people don't say, the crime was committed against me. People say,
Right.
this sketchy dude was on my porch, right? So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if y'all can kind of figure out a way to, before we put something on Facebook about when you do this, you want to use a hashtag, maybe we can have a better understanding of exactly, I mean, I don't know at all. I've never used the hashtag.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't know how that exactly works.
It's on
But
Twitter,
before we
isn't it? Doesn't it?
encourage our
It works
neighbors
on
to use
Facebook.
it, if we understood better what that's going to drive.
Well, there's a learn by seeing too, like if,
Yeah.
and if someone comments, hashtagging this so we can find it later.
Okay.
The hashtag,
Yeah.
you know, but
Well,
there's-
that's good.
There could be a more organized.
And remember, all of us are ambassadors. And so all of us can put things on Facebook and talk to our neighbors and do these things individually. It doesn't have to come from the board down. It doesn't have to be organized that way. It's a very egalitarian organization, so everybody can do their own work to improve these sorts of things. Okay, so organizing by block, and doing this thing with Facebook.
I'm hearing kind of, and this is just the way my brain works, so stop me if this isn't helpful, but I'm hearing almost these three big buckets we've been talking about throughout the day. There's the channels, like the Facebook, the newsletter,
So the communication channels.
Yes, and then there's engagement, like this kind of social engagement and how we're talking about organizing by block. And then there's this tools piece. And it almost seems like we're talking about the way those three things have the potential to work together. Like, so engagement is really activating people and almost like y'all were talking about coming up with a guide for how to activate people around their block. The tools could be these specified, I don't know if they're like one-sheeter, like a web page, like one kind of like action item thing per, like here's a zoning one, here's a crime one, here's a however we define those out. And then the communication channels are honoring all the different ways we need to like engage people and activate them and disseminate. And it seems like tools and communication channels, a tiered down level of engagement would be funneling people towards committees and or something more finite, like a project team or something. I know he said there's some commitment issues around committees because maybe they last until the end of time. So there may be some things that are better done in like a project team. But I don't know, it feels like fleshing out like those three and how they work together are kind of the threads, but I don't know if that's helpful.
I think that's very helpful. And that's what we need to do. We need to take the conversation that we started out with and kind of funnel it into some practical.
Sure. It made my mind go to, on the tools side, what are the, like, we can probably only start with a couple of those. So what are the kind of the most important ones to start with? I feel like we zeroed in on crime and zoning, but are there others, or do we make a list of like, we'd love to leave today creating these 2 tools, 3 tools, 5 tools, I don't know what's like reasonable. But then also that, I heard on the organizing by block is like, is there a kind of process we could put in place to say, here's how that goes, and kind of outline those too. I don't know if that's helpful, but.
Well, and just a thought, we have National Night Out coming up on the 1st of October. And we get more people from the neighborhood at that event than really any other than our holiday event. The two are pretty closely tied. I think it's something about the food. But in any event, there's an opportunity. And it's an opportunity, again, on the communication side to grab people that may not be on Facebook or may not pay attention to the newsletter. It's just another way to get to people. And it's actually a tactic that consultants are now using, where instead of inviting people to their planning meeting, they go out to the events and be there. So, do we want a volunteer table or a committee volunteer table or do we want to maybe set up a table at the National Night Out to help with developing, these ideas, the organizing by block? Do we want to have that at National Night Out and say a sign-up sheet? Do we not want to make it a sign-up sheet? Does that discourage people? Do we want to have a little cheat sheet or a primer or cliff notes written up on, this is a new project that the neighborhood's trying to promote? Take one of these and see if you can energize your block. Is that an idea?
That's an excellent idea. And we can sort of maybe ask them to look, we're not saying you're going to be block captain, but you're interested, please sign up and we'll call you. But what we can also do is we have those sign-up sheets from the neighborhood. And, it'd be nice to call people from different blocks and say, how would you feel about, we'll help you have your first block party. Let's just, have a potluck on your yard. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, so for the sign-up sheet on National Night Out, don't necessarily say who wants to host a block party, like you said, just who's interested, and then maybe for those we can call and maybe even have a meeting beforehand to kind of, we're gonna have a meeting for those who are interested, see what blocks are covered from there.
How many here would be willing to host the first block party on your street? So we can be the pilot program here. And,
We have one together.
should we, I don't want to lock anybody in too much because we're just getting up with the idea, but should we give ourselves some sort of time frame of when we try to do it by? Like I said, we got National Night coming up, we're going to be busy with that, but within the next 2 months?
Maybe
Is that-
November.
November. Okay.
And is it something we want to try to coordinate that everybody's doing it at the same time, or do we want to leave it more flexible?
I'd say we're pretty flexible, at least.
And let's advertise the crap out of it. Like afterwards,
But what do you advertise?
Not like these blocks did this block party and they had such a good time and they have come up with some
So after the fact.
Yeah.
So
after the fact.
reporting what happened.
Like make a big deal of reporting it.
Well, and so we're all at this meeting, so we're all engaged, and several of us raised our hands and said, yeah, we would do that. So what makes sense to me is we just all do it however makes sense to us. We just do it. And then we get together and we're like, how did you do it? How did you do it? Did that work? Did that not work? And we can get ideas from each other instead of trying to come up with the ideas before we do it. And then that's what we could use to sort of be like, it can be a lot of different ways. This worked for some people, we have.
I tend to agree with that, because again, we have different populations, different streets, different people who are gonna wanna do the block parties in different ways, different levels of commitment that they're gonna wanna do. So to leave it a little bit more organic.
I still think it's a good idea to collect names or see.
Yeah, something like that.
The more people
Because
get on board to do
Who
it
will
better.
staff that table at National Night
Well,
Out?
but we're gonna have a board table anyway. Should it be separate from that, or should it just be part of their role?
Don't look at me.
Lump it in.
Everybody's looking at me.
I think
We're
lump
gonna have
it
a
in.
board table, board members at a table for whatever purpose, I'm not sure. And that can be part of
But
their.
now it has a purpose.
Nancy?
No, just help it.
Okay, so Nancy will help.
I mean, I think if we had a poster too, like parties or just very general.
Yeah, I'm happy to throw something together that like design something like that, or that's like, here are the 3 easy steps of what it even means to host a block party, and like share it back with this group and get everybody's feedback. But there's something that's just that like, it's really this easy. Like, here are the 3 things.
So you'll kind of put that together. She'll man the table. We'll need some sort of a sign or thingy, announcing that, and we'll want it now. We don't have are we getting an early newsletter? No, okay, so we don't have a newsletter going out before National Night Out, but that's okay, because it'll be a visible presence there, and we can certainly promote it on Facebook. So that's an action that we've now come up with, to have a table there to try to get, now are we doing it specifically on the block party thing, right? Okay. All right, that sounds good. And then, and this is gonna be Steven. He's gonna work on this.
Wouldn't it be beneficial, not only the block party, but also National Night Out? Not so much instead of having a volunteer, why don't we have something like information regarding your neighborhood association, what it does, what it can do for you, maybe.
Well, we're having a board table.
Yeah,
So maybe
yeah.
do we need to do a poster board that maybe kind of highlights a few
Yeah.
things? What are you thinking?
Yeah, something like that, so that at least the people that are not on Facebook, that don't come to the meetings, can say, oh, I didn't know they did that, you know, if I need help with this. Even, and this costs money, but even creating some kind of magnet for your refrigerator with the important phone numbers, the safe officer, you know, non-emergency police number, you know, just so that way they know they have information. You know, just something like that, you know.
I mean, it is on the back of the newsletter.
But again, a lot of people just throw the newsletter away.
No, valid idea. My only problem with it is that they change stuff up so often.
Yeah.
You're left with this obsolete stuff on your refrigerator. So when you need it, it's like, oh, that's not
But you
me.
could have something highlighted like, oh, we helped catch a thief. And then, oh, we got rid of water.
Yeah, you could have something in there that says BHANA and what did Allen Heights call us? Contentious, not
stop.
right attacking.
Because a lot of people are not on Facebook. A lot of people,
Yeah.
you know, don't engage in events. You know, you can bring them out that way. Even my wife had an idea, I think she told Kim, just even for like our board meetings, have situations where, you know, invite your neighbor, give them like a raffle ticket and have a prize, you know, to whoever brings the most, you know, new members or new people coming to the event. Something to be an incentive for people to come
Bring your
out.
neighbor to a meeting, whoever brings in, I bring 5 neighbors.
Yeah, you get a
Gift card.
a cookie or something, you know, just something to encourage people to go out and bring people in. Because like I said, a lot of people not on social media and even just give them just basic information, this is what it can do for you, or this is what's available for us to do for you. Because a lot of people don't know, you know. I talk to my neighbors and only one out of, you know, the whole area that I live in does come to the meeting. But so I keep some of the neighbors that I talk to say, hey, you know, this is what we discussed and this is what's going on, you know, just to let them know, you know, something's happening. You're not a
Yeah,
part.
and there again, you're going back to this. You're an ambassador.
Yeah.
You're an ambassador, so.
I like Celia's idea that I don't think got heard was at the National Night Out, advertising what has been accomplished by engaging with the neighborhood association, like she said. We, as a neighborhood, we came together, we were able to do this thing, this thing, and this thing.
So I'm wondering what the best way would be to do that. Now, Kim, are we gonna have a mic there?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think there's room at that event for us as a neighborhood, as a board, to talk to the people that are there and inform and engage and bring up some of these things. So as we're coming, so to your point about her point, that would be something that maybe we need to make a list of a few recent successful highlights and make that part of what we announce when we're there, because I don't know how else, unless somebody else has a different idea.
You could do like the little hello stickers, and board members can say, we caught a thief, ask me how, or something like that. You know, like that.
Okay,
That's good.
okay.
Actually, we did too. We prevented a development that would tear down everybody's house. Ask me now.
Yeah, we saved that house.
You've got 3 hours.
So body tags.
Oh, okay, that's,
How about name tags?
Well, it's not a name tag. It's- I mean, I can't put a name tag.
Exactly.
how about a brag tag?
Yeah. A brag tag.
Toe tag.
Anybody need a copy?
Design.
Okay.
talk to us.
So, yeah, who wants to work on this as far as figuring out maybe 5 different things that we've been successful of, and then maybe we could make, do we want to make just one of those for each of those 5 topics, and then we have 5 board members? And it doesn't have to be board members. I don't know why it would have to be board members, because we have board and committee chairs, so.
Everybody wearing. Well, what would they say?
Well,
Besides, I caught a thief asking me how, and I beautified my yard, or
We saved a house.
We saved the house, ask me how.
Daniel's getting 3 blocks of road resurface that the city was gonna skip. They
Yes.
plan to do,
We fixed our roads.
they plan to do a 3-block section of, or longer,
Michigan.
of Michigan, and the section they have on the schedule is like way better than these other blocks. And so he poked away at it, and they're gonna do the whole thing.
Save
Or
the
the
house.
sidewalks on Blanco.
what about the garden?
so save the house is fine. Which house? What's the
The
example?
one over there on, the one they
Miguel?
just carted away.
What?
The one they carted away.
They carted away a house, we say? Oh,
We didn't
okay.
save it for
Well,
our
Miguel might be a better example.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the way, just half off the neighborhood, that's probably not the best.
Okay.
And this list that we're coming up with, maybe they're tags, maybe it's a flyer, maybe it's both, you know, the same information could be on it. These are the kinds of things that we do. There could be a sheet they pick up, you
That's
know.
what
Maybe both.
We
designed
need
the
tags,
park.
what about graffiti? That didn't-
Or could we, more volunteers to say BHANA ambassador, and I wouldn't mind, like, if I was there. If I had a list of all the activities, like how to get your sidewalk, and then, hi, I'm so-and-so, did you know about this here? You can find more at the, go by the block party, go by, but you can go by our board table here. You know, in case people are shy.
So
about-
people who volunteer to be ambassadors.
Yeah, just talk to people and have that listing. It could be both listing of services and accomplishments.
Well, so Daniel and several others have been working on a welcome committee, which hasn't really gotten off the ground, but he's started putting together a really good document that, it doesn't have these specifics, and that would be cool, but like, this committee does this committee does that, you know, and that could be a little flyer that we hand out, because he's written it already.
Did we have one in the past? Because I was gonna ask about that. Because on the newsletter, I think it says welcome to me. I'm like, I never.
Say it out loud.
It's trying to get off the ground.
Okay.
Dahlia had a great point.
We can say clubs instead of committees, if people are opposed to committees.
Clubs.
That's a good.
Okay.
idea.
Yeah.
The Lion Club and the.
Infrastructure, the I Club.
It's a word crowd.
Okay, that's important. That's important.
Let's see.
Okay, and, you know, being an ambassador, that's another, words are important. Wordsmithing, you know, can help a lot with making people, how they perceive something. And so I think that's important.
Yeah, you want to be on board.
So ambassadors, and Diane has already volunteered, but we're all ambassadors, so we should all feel free. And we're gonna have, Daniel's gonna have, the board's gonna have a table. Sarah's gonna do a primer on how to organize. And so are we gonna have a separate table for the block party thing? What do you think? Do we need a separate table? Do we make it part of do we just have the board table? Do we maybe have a board table and right next to it, a couple of other tables so that people kind of get all of that in one go? We make announcements. I mean, we'll want to make announcements. We can do that too. But as far as structurally at National Night Out. Okay. Well, we can, we still have a couple weeks. So as people, as you think about this and you have an idea or you're willing to volunteer, or you talk to a neighbor and they're willing to volunteer, or a friend or a family member that's in the neighborhood, then maybe we can flesh some of this out, Kim.
And then speaking to this, because it sounds like National Night Out is going to be an opportunity to spread some info, we are having a National Night Out planning meeting this coming Wednesday. I think probably most all of you might know that, but that'd be an opportunity for us to figure some of this stuff out that we don't necessarily need to figure it out right now.
Okay, so planning, the National Night Out planning meeting, is that?
It's on Wednesday. It's at Cynthia Spielman's house, which is 900 West
Corner of
Willow.
Woodlawn and Blanco.
It's at
Spanish
6:30.
House, no
There's a
parking.
Facebook event. If you aren't in the loop and you want to be, you can leave me your email. But I think actually everybody in this room was on the email list. I'm not sure if I sent it to you. It's okay. Yeah.
So to get back to the action plan on other items, so we have decided today Sarah's going to help me do, for zoning, to break it down into sizable chunks and help me do presentations, create presentations that will make it easy so that, so people, renters and homeowners, will understand when we're talking about some really important issues, like, oh, okay, at least I understand what they're talking about.
Okay.
Where to go.
So Sarah and Cynthia are on that. And is that something that you're seeing, you're gonna pass out at National Night Out? Also, you're gonna have some kind of a sheet at the table? I mean, it won't hurt.
Take a little
Yeah.
longer.
I think
Oh,
it would
okay.
take.
I think it might take a little longer.
Okay, we're not even done with the manual yet.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so that's kind of separate from National Night Out. The raffle, Daniel, do we still have raffle tickets?
Many raffle tickets, yes.
But they have
wait, we
dates.
weren't talking about, how would we do that? So if you bring, whoever brings
Oh, you mean, I was.
Oh,
her
you mean just
idea,
the
or their
roll.
idea
She
about
just means
bringing
the roll.
people to the meeting. So how do we enact this? We make an announcement, that's easy. So a raffle really maybe isn't the right term, because a raffle means to pick a name. So it's a prize, a prize.
Prize from a local business, again, bringing in the business community.
There we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
$10 Chris Madrid's gift certificate for the person who brings the most people to the meeting.
Until we
Okay.
get to 5,000.
15 from Sohill, GG Emporium has great,
But should it be brand new people? You can't.
That's what I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
You can't bring in somebody to come.
Bring in somebody who's
Right.
And the secretary keeps a list of everybody who's come to a meeting that year, so, yeah,
We're gonna check it.
we'll be checking.
Okay, so I would be willing to work with some of the businesses to see if they'd be willing to put up a price. So I'll do that aspect of it. And then other than that, it's just about announcing it in the newsletter. So Kim, I think we make a recurring announcement in the newsletter, just a fixed thing that says, the person who brings the most new neighbors to a meeting will win a...
Will they be in a draw?
No, it's well, I mean, and if
We could do it this way because
That solves two problems.
you may be bringing yourself. There might be 7 people who brought themselves, so maybe everyone who's new they get a ticket, they go in a hat, you might win 20
prize.
Is that 2 separate things?
No, I was thinking instead because,
That's true, all new people. will
but I
be-
guess the point is to encourage new people to come. So I don't have the answer, but it's just a thought.
So there's 2 ideas. Then there's the idea of rewarding, that's the word, the person who brings the most new people. And then there's the idea of rewarding the new individual people who come, right? Those are the 2 different things we're talking about. Does one seem to be a better idea than the other? Do we can always try one first and try the other one later. I mean, we're not locked into
They're
things.
not mutually exclusive, they can go back and forth.
Well, this was kind of y'all's idea, so.
Yeah, what do you
have-
think?
I was gonna say, not so much reward the person that brings somebody in, because the reward is bringing somebody in, but, I don't know.
Yeah, because I guess I hadn't thought about like, if we said we were gonna do that next meeting, I'd go tell neighbors, but I wouldn't expect to be the winner. because-
Yeah, but you
You know,
announced, like, so-and-so brought, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of torn between the individual.
If the new person, you know, their name goes to the raffle, then they're getting rewarded for coming to the meeting. You know, if one neighbor, say I bring 4 of my neighbors and I get the most, well, why? Those 4 people are, I mean, they're in the meeting, yay, that's exciting for them, but like, I think it would be a little bit better to reward them
Yeah,
than to reward
yeah.
me. And those 4 people.
Yeah, because when I thought of logistics.
Thanks, I'll enjoy this $10.
Yeah,
by myself.
I mean, it doesn't mean I can still promote my neighbor
Right,
and say,
right,
hey,
exactly.
go and have a bid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
So that begs the question, we bring in these hordes of people, how do we have meetings? I mean, I know the last 2
Right, the
meetings,
hordes.
the 2-hour meetings on, BHANA bylaws is probably enough to make everybody hide out forever, but how do we have, our normal meetings which take an hour, when some of you have gone to meetings and you're like, oh my God, that was amazing, or oh my God, I'll never go back. What were the things that we can offer people that are the most meaningful and will make them want to come back?
Well, I know we have to cover business at the meetings, but I enjoy the beginning because like when y'all were introduced, like when new people are introduced, to me that's interesting. If say we did get hordes of people, I mean, I think, you know, I know there's business we have to cover, so there's a fine line between the time we could vote to, okay, let's introduce, but
Should we schedule in, say, a 15-minute period at the beginning where it's not a meeting? You're just talking. Social. So, yeah, it's like.
And maybe in that conversationally, you just say, who's new?
Right.
Yay,
Yes.
yay that you're here, talk, chit chat, and then the
And
meeting.
we got some food last time, both because people have talked about maybe having food and all of a sudden there's going to be a long one. How important do you think food is? And will that help with the social thing?
You know what people also enjoy is you have the map of Beacon Hill and where are you? Like, where do you live? And you kind of look at see.
We could have a map with the little pins or
Yeah.
stickers, and when
Yeah.
people come in and there's the sign-up sheet, you can get a pin and you can
Yeah.
stick. I mean, that'd be a fun little interactive.
And we can figure out who's on what block.
Right.
That's a cool idea.
So I think, we've done this in the past when we were having serious, issues, zoning and some other issues. Where we just set aside maybe 5 or 10 minutes at each meeting when we're talking about very practical specifics, like these tools we're developing, like introducing these new tools. This is how, we're actually dealing with the stray problem. There's this, SNPSA and whatever. Or this is how you get your sidewalk taken care of. This is, that kind of thing. I think it would be helpful.
Right, like who has a live track, those tracks, main tracks.
Right.
So have a sort of community discussion.
Like, even providing those tools and explaining the tools to people just for 5 minutes during the meeting. And oh, by the way, you can find this feed posted on our Facebook page or whatever.
Yeah, so meetings, there are neighborhoods that don't do monthly association meetings, they'll do an annual, and just their board meets monthly. So in that case, the board really has a lot of control over what happens in that neighborhood. Beacon Hill has always been a little bit the reverse. It's always been about the membership driving the work of the board and the inclusivity being important. This is sort of the track that we get into as far as business is important, because I'll tell you what, zoning can be boring till it's the house next to you that's being rezoned as business. So when you live at 823 West Hollywood and Chris Madrid's is expanding and putting in a live band stage and a play yard, and you live 2 houses down, all of a sudden, zoning is really important to you. That's just human nature, right? Just like with the crime thing, it becomes very personal when it happens to you. So we struggle as a board with making the meeting engaging and interesting and not horribly boring. but we also have things that we know as a board are going on in the city, are coming down the pipe, that if we don't have an engaged community that kind of understands these things, we're gonna be, it's
So
gonna be
sucks
hard.
to you if you get caught and you're not, like, you're starting from ground zero, and people have to understand what's going on. And how do we do that without boring the, people to tears?
I think that, and that I'm just talking about myself because I've gone to some meetings where I'm kind of like, okay, what the hell are they talking about? When it comes to zoning, this zone,
Yeah.
this, I'm like, if we could have like a cheat sheet, if we're gonna be talking about that, say, okay, this S whatever is this. This is the definition.
Well,
So-
normally we put it on the back, but I'm not sure
Yeah.
that's even enough, right?
Yeah, so at least, if somebody says a term, I can say, oh, okay, that's what it means. So at least I know, because I'm like, sometimes I'm just sitting there, I'm like, okay, so
Well, and
I
that's,
don't know what they're talking about.
and that's why one of the things that we've tried lately is to put the zoning cases in the half hour before the meeting. So if you're interested in that zoning case, you can go at 6:30, and from 6:30 to 7, we have a little mini meeting about that zoning case. And then people who are not interested can just come to the regular association meeting.
But those are in education, even if they're not next door to you, they're in education. Because
But it is a steep learning curve.
Yeah.
I've been doing it for 13 years, and I get caught off guard, believe you me. And things change, and like Cynthia mentioned, they're changing the Unified Development Code now, and so things are gonna change. It's a constant learning curve, constant.
That's why I
It's a
think on the
challenge.
other side, you had something about training, about, just
Right.
like,
You
zoning
know,
101 and stuff.
Yes.
Right,
I
right, right.
understand the language.
Yeah.
Right, and that I think we've got, we know that we're gonna do that. Cynthia and Sarah are gonna work, and that Cynthia's doing it for Tier 1 anyway, so I think we have that, and that will help. And if I can just mention, in addition, one of the reasons that Cynthia and I think this is so important is we have a Midtown Neighborhoods Plan that is for Alta Vista, Beacon Hill, and the St. Anne's neighborhood on the other side of Fredericksburg Road. This was done in 2000. It was done at the behest of the city with the encouragement of the city. These plans, these individual plans, are now being absorbed by a larger sub-area plan. So we will lose some of the individual unique control that we currently have in our design standards and our land uses because of this bigger plan. It is what it is. We fought it. We were able to get the language in the document that drives this whole project to include a lot more neighborhood supportive language, but it's still going to be a process, and it's going to affect all of us, transportation, housing, density of housing, and so forth. So whether you are for density or against density, for public transportation or against it, it's going to affect. And people, so I've been writing or doing an article every month that shows excerpts from our existing plans, so people can start kind of hearing the language, getting an idea of where we're coming from, and then we have to talk about as a community, where do we want to go? Because if we are not ready for that conversation, the city and other neighborhoods that are better prepared will make those decisions for us. So fortunately, we have a year or so to get ready. We're trying to kind of subliminally infuse some of this information, but this is what I personally always struggle with is, yes, I know it's boring, yes, I know it's hard to learn, but it affects us in a way that's really critical in our neighborhoods, and so how do we, that's a
I
challenge.
always think that it's like Lord of the Rings, where, we're the Shire, and we're doing all these wonderful things, and there's this whole war, this big thing going on around us that will really, you can't imagine the changes that could happen if we're not standing there going, we have a voice in guiding what happens in our neighborhood. We're not NIMBYs, but we have a voice in guiding some of that, because we understand what happens on the ground, how people can get displaced, or how, so more of us have to get educated about this.
Yeah.
I think your primer is a good tool, and I'll help you,
Thank you.
look at it and make sure that it's really clear.
Well, actually,
All those acronyms need to be.
Oh, yeah, I know, that acronyms are, actually, the person person who developed it for Tier 1, someone interned, it was Madeline Area, who
Yeah.
lives in our neighborhood, put out 53 pages of, like, she just did all of the links, all of the, and so, you know, we're taking it and making it more, you know, user-friendly. So I can't take the, you know, I can't take credit for that.
Okay, well, I know we had this scheduled to 1. It's 5 to 12 now. What is left for us to discuss? Or do we want to sit here and say, okay, we've got some ideas, we've got some names next to them, let's take this, run with this, and it's not like we can't have another meeting in 3 months to kind of come back and say, where are we? Where are we with our indicators? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I know it's kind of a specific one, but it's, you know, one that I
Please.
think is very important. Is when we were going back to talking about helping our neighbors that can't take care of their properties.
Mhm.
I really want to talk about what's the best way to do that. Is that to form a new committee that, you know, spearheads organizing the volunteers and connecting with the people that need that help? Is that the best route to go
Daniel
with that?
actually started that. Why don't you tell me about the neighbors?
Take the floor.
No. Neighbor helping neighbor? Kim.
Well,
Kim?
I didn't start a committee. There was just someone reached out to me, and I went, let's go help her clear her lot. Like, code was kind of on her. But to answer your question, I think we kind of need 2 things, and one of them, I do think we need a committee because we're going to need to organize volunteers.
Right.
But I think the block captain would be the way to identify, like, you know, Mrs. So-and-so, like, her husband died, her lawn is like longer and longer, I don't see her son around, you know, or whatever.
Right.
And then the block captain could be the one to sort of feed to the committee, like, you know, maybe feel her out, like, would you be willing to have help? Because that's gonna be a challenge too, is finding people. So I do think we need a committee for sure.
So those both things kind of in tandem
Committee
to work
first,
together.
and then as we're, and we all have neighbors, we know neighbors too, and so the committee we can do a big article, like, we're starting this committee, help us find people. If you need help, reach out. If you know someone that you think needs help, reach out, you know, talk to them. So maybe not the block captain thing, but definitely a committee.
So,
Sure.
speaking to that point, how does a committee become formed within the
That's
association?
the board
takes the
people.
reins and go.
Right.
You're it.
I mean, you're in.
I mean, I actually
Literally.
wouldn't mind
Yeah.
spearheading this committee, I just would like, yeah.
One person who really wants it is then able to find some other people who want it too, get them together and start.
And we'll all help.
But then there's an official process to going to the board and saying, here's the thing I want to do. And I'll tell you, they're going to say, sweet, do it. They're going to be super excited.
Yeah, we'll probably ask some questions, but basically like, you want to do something? Please, do something.
Okay.
But that'll also make some funds available to you and whatnot.
I will just say specifically to that topic, the other thing that I would think would be great with that committee is to also work in tandem with the benevolent fund, because Lucy and Lola are familiar with neighbors, families in need, and have kind of done that kind of work. And also the Zoning and Urban Design Committee, because we deal with code enforcement issues.
Yeah.
And so, again, I'm going to diverge just for a minute. One of the things that I've had to learn coming into this neighborhood, initially, you know, I thought using code enforcement was a good thing. You see something falling down, or you see somebody parking their car on the lawn, or any number of things, and you can drop a dime, you know, and then they get this, the code officer comes out and cites them or whatever. But along with neighbors helping neighbors and the property maintenance things, one of the things I found out is when you drop that dime, you start a process that you no longer have control over, the neighborhood has no control over, and can lead to a place that you did not intend. So you call about a house that's in poor condition, code enforcement goes over there, whether it's a rental or not, there's people living in there, and they start writing up a bunch of violations, and those people can get evicted from that house by the city for those violations. So you have to think, if I drop this dime, does it displace a family? And what we have tried to do with the zoning committee is to try to handle some of those cases on our own. So along with the neighbor helping neighbor would be coordination on some of those resources that we know are available. The district office will chip in, code enforcement officers will help on a Saturday to clean up the property. So we have resources, so let's not leave those resources on the table. But as much as possible, I would encourage us to do this work internally. And there's a philosophy called abundant community, which talks about changing what we have done in decades past, where we outsource our child care and all of these assistances to outside our neighborhood, when really we have people within the neighborhood that have the talent, the skill, and if we can tap into their goodwill, that can help us solve these problems internally. And it gives us more power as a community, it makes us healthier, it makes us safer, and the day that there's an emergency, we are much the better prepared for that emergency because we are already a community. So often we see these devastations, these disasters, and people say, oh, I can't, you know, the neighborhoods really come together. But what if you're a neighborhood that is together, that's already ready to go? And then you know that there's an elderly woman living on this corner, and let's go there and make sure she's okay. I think that makes us, you know, that's as good as it gets. That's, for me, that's as good as it gets. That's why I'm here. That's what I love.
Well done.
So, put me on the committee.
You?
With Emily here. She's sold.
Wow, great. Okay, is there anybody's name who isn't up here for an assignment? Gary, I know you were discouraged about some of what you tried to do with the crime. I know you were discouraged about some of what you tried to do on the crime front. Is there anything that you've heard today or that you see up here that you would be willing to try again or take a lead on or participate in?
Well, first let me, if I may, start with a question. You know, I mentioned the COPS program. I wonder what would happen, could they be approached, SAPD, to possibly put that online? And would some people that are not willing to go to the course,
Okay.
even if they don't get credit, willing to study that online? I don't know, does anybody think that's a good idea?
That's an excellent.
I think it's an excellent idea because I would suspect that the in-person thing isn't really all that.
Yeah, I don't know who would be responsible to approach SAPD, or if it would be a number of us.
Perhaps it's you just volunteered.
Well, I don't know how much attention they're going to pay to one person.
No, but you can say, you know, that you are speaking, that you were at a planning meeting for the neighborhood and this was a topic of concern for people, and that you had tried to implement this COPS program or to participate in it, but you found that there was this barrier in getting people to be able to go and attend these classes, and could they put it online? I don't know, I have had no experience with our current SAFE officer to know how responsive. He's cool.
I've heard he's pretty cool.
Okay, so I would start there. Have a conversation with Officer Sanchez, that's his name, right, Albert Sanchez? And say that, you know, you think that the community would be more willing to take this step to learn these things if they could do it at home, when they have time, online. I mean, more and more.
You can do it piecemeal that way. You can do a half hour today, a half hour tomorrow.
Perfect. Do it.
Yeah.
See, and then provide us some feedback, because sometimes if you get some pushback, it doesn't have to end there. You let us know, and we'll have a different. I would never stop there. So that's me.
Okay. I was curious
I'm
what the rest might have thought of that.
Runs into the wall and then turns around and then runs into this.
In regards to your question, yes, I'm willing to do anything.
Perfect.
But if I'm the only one that's going to do anything, you know what? My end of the block is already covered. As far as my eyes can see, we've got it under control. I mean, we're not perfect. We still have crime. Some of you saw the video of the knifing in my front yard. I don't know. Okay, that person went straight to jail thanks to Ring camera. So we still have issues, but we're awake. We're alert. So I have asked other
If at first you
people,
don't
curious how we
see
gonna get
sidetrack.
people really interested in participating in crime prevention in Beacon Hill. It seems to me like the crime is pretty high, but I haven't really recently looked at the stats.
Yeah, well, they don't give them to us anymore like they used to. So let's just try and see where it goes.
I'll
Okay,
call-
Eric? We'll just try and
I'll
see
call
where it goes.
SIPD, I'll start with
Talk
this
with-
information line and ask them to direct me to somebody.
I
That's
would
a
actually,
process.
the safe officer would be a good first point.
Yes, I
because
agree, yes.
Yeah.
He's like
Absolutely.
our neighborhood guy.
I'd like to meet him too.
He would, reach out to him, he'll come by.
Is he
I've had
supposed to
great
be at a
experiences with
He
the
comes-
police in our neighborhood. 98% of them are really good, really intelligent people. I'm happy to say I know a lot of them just because of the experiences of my neighborhood. And they know me. And so that's great. I'm kind of proud of them.
Good.
Yeah, I
Good.
love our cops in blue.
Good. We all have different hot button issues, and it's the team that makes it work. It's not individuals, it's the team. So I think we've done some really good work here. I think we kind of achieved what we had hoped to achieve, so I'm hoping everybody is happy with that. If anybody has any last minute comments or suggestions?
We had somebody else that was going to facilitate today. He organizes first responders for a living, and they sent him to Houston, so he couldn't. Kosama this morning, I mean, she did this all she just pulled it out. She was completely unprepared, and I said, "You do it," and she said, "Okay." And I'm not saying for the moment, you did such an amazing job.
Thank you.
I just want a clarification on the block.
Yes.
So to sum it up, and tell me if I'm ashamed, we're gonna have information at the table about, but you still want, like, if we were the first ones to do it in November, we can do that and then share later, but we're still gonna take,
Yeah,
have a
she's just
sign-up
gonna
sheet
do a
about people
primer.
that wants to know.
Right.
Okay.
But if you feel ready to go,
But yeah, I
Is
think
everybody's email legible? Because I'll send out these notes to everybody here.
We'll have a discussion after. My handwriting is terrible. so-
But I agree, Diana, that there was an action item that anyone here who wants to start it, but try to do it in November.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we had a
That's
late
fun,
comer.
Thanksgiving, like that's easy.
Actually, I just want to apologize, I was planning on being,
Yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say, I'm sorry for being late, I had some prior commitments, but I got here as soon as I could. And I don't know if this is a open forum thing, okay. What I'm gonna bring up is a very, very sore subject, I know, for Beacon Hill, just because we are one of the people that purchased a flipped home in the area. We have found out a lot of problems that go along with these people that are coming and flipping these homes. One of the homes that's been flipped.
Oh,
So,
Any problems with what?
with our home that has been flipped, the people that did the renovations pulled permits, but the interesting thing about it is even though they pulled the permits, they did not do things correctly. The city doesn't track these permits as they're coming in. And there's actually a few of the permits that were pulled, the city never even came out and did the inspections on.
Many of the permits are what they call no review.
Yeah.
There's no inspection, so it's a
So-
big problem.
Are you doing your contract?
Go
Yeah.
ahead, Bill.
That's ridiculous.
Hello.
That's
Oh, it's
ridiculous.
terrible. I mean, I'll say this, the one saving grace is our foundation, they had to lift the house 18 inches. The contractor that did the work did the worst job possible.
I've seen some bad stuff.
We're now seeing that what they did is, I mean, just without going into too much detail, instead of having a proper footing, they literally had the footing sitting on top of the ground. The saving grace to it is the engineer that was responsible for it, for signing off on it. I've talked to him and he's actually covering the cost of having it repaired. So far, they've had to add 70 new pylons underneath our house and he's flipping the bill. So, kudos to him, really thank God for that. But it's actually destroyed our house because now inside all the walls are cracked and torn and it's terrible. But my question to you, Paul, because you guys have been down here for so long, and I see a lot of the things on there I think that are actually quite awesome. And if we're not able to support something like this right now, there are some other things that I would like to support some way, somehow. But my question is at some point down the road, it would be really neat since you guys know the system a lot better than I do, to help me direct me in a direction where I can start talking to code, or not to code, but to the building permit. So it becomes more of a mandatory of, hey, you know what, this has been outstanding for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. We need to follow up on this and see where they are.
It doesn't have to wait, we've already started down this road. Are you willing to do something like talk in front of city council? Would you be willing to tell your story in a more public way? We got you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'd be happy to work.
Yeah.
But he makes the point that I made it a little earlier about, it seems like it's all boring and the technical language is a pain in the ass. But we deal with that. That's part of what the zoning committee does. We are watching, we get a permit report, and we know which permits are pulled. We look at those, and when it says replacing 17 windows, we're going to go make sure that those window openings don't get changed, because our NCD doesn't allow for it. Now, whether you agree with that or you don't disagree with it, that's the law right now. And that is a no review permit. And so the guy comes in and says he's going to do these things and replace them with windows of the same size, but nobody's checking to see if he does that. We are constantly behind the wrecking ball on these things. Everybody can help us with that. If you see something, say something. If you see somebody doing demolition work or doing repair work, send an email to the ZUD committee. It's on the back of the thing. We can look that address up, find out if there are permits, and then we can talk to our person, our liaison in code enforcement, and have them check and make sure that what's being done there is what's on the permit.
Because the new business model is they buy a ton of houses all over the city and they don't pull permits. And it's up to us to say, do you have a permit, and call it in and make them have to, because you're lucky at least there was permits pulled, because most of the time there isn't.
Well, I'm a little worried about it because now that they've walked away from it, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm a little paranoid because if it does turn out, like they put an addition on our home, and they did the final for the electrical, but there's no plumbing over there, so any of the framework or any of that other stuff, those permits they're still open, so, yeah.
It's very discouraging. I mean, it gets hard to be on that zoning committee because you go through the same things over and over and over again, and you just don't see. We have fought with the city on, whether it was the condos on Craig, whether it was the gas station on Woodlawn and Fred, and unfortunately, so often we are painted as being NIMBYs or being anti-development, and that's not it. We just want the development that we worked so hard for by doing a neighborhood plan, by having neighborhood conservation district design standards, and by wanting safe and habitable properties that people are paying money for. And so you constantly have to make sure that the city understands that we are expecting them to do their part of the job on those items.
And those help stabilize communities, so you don't have renters and residents being displaced out of their own neighborhoods. I mean, it does. I mean, they'll say, well, it makes it more expensive. Actually, it doesn't. It makes it harder for developers to come in and jack up the prices everywhere, which has happened in other neighborhoods, and it allows people, it stabilizes our community.
Yeah, and just one closing point on that. The condos on Craig, for example, 3 of them are up for sale now. That kind of turnover destabilizes. That property in the middle of that block will be the least sustainable property on
And
that
they had all the same kind of thing, all kinds of problems.
So it looks good for a minute, but it's just, it's all profit driven. All right. Sir, I'm sorry, can you give us your name and the block that you live on?
Oh, yeah. Dave Richmond, and I live on Weisach, 1100 block.
Okay, very good. We thank you for your time and for your passion. And let's try to not leave this and let it languish. Let's try to poco by poco work on these things. And it's like I said, it's a constant project. We can't get discouraged as long as we're trying. I used to I got real discouraged once in my life and gave up doing humanitarian work. And then I came back to it and I said, it doesn't matter if I make a change. It only matters that I try. And if you keep that attitude and you keep working and you keep trying, that change will come. So, all right. Very good. Thank you.